Hey guys, I know it's been forever. I'm transitioning things here with the channel. It's gonna get a lot better. I know I've neglected you guys a bit. I wanted to do another patient sort of journey video. So Ethan was the perfect subject for that. Check out his music, and if you have any questions, you can also email him I'll leave his information in the description box. You guys let me know what do you feel is lacking. I can make a video on anything. You guys want more patients, you want more Oscar, you want more Sleep HQ, you want comparisons, sleep studies, interviews with top doctors. Tell me what you want, I'll try to make it happen. I'm going to complete a few more educational pathways. I'm gonna go do my master's in sleep medicine with Oxford, and by the time you watch this video, I'll probably also be a registered polysomnographic technologist. Let me know what you guys think about the idea of me sending you guys sleep studies that are basically in clinic or in hospital quality, and then I mark it as well, where we can talk over it. Of course, I'm not a doctor, right? So we need a doctor's prescription to get the sleep study, but I can ship it, I can have it at your place, I can mark it, I can discuss it with you, and I can discuss, you know, let's say sleep patient advocate topics, such as CPAP, Oscar, Sleep HQ, and so on. Let me know if that'd be something of interest. If you think that's of value, email me. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. So a couple other little updates. You guys can see that I'm in my Invisalign now. And I'm also just about to go get my Mind hardware removed. And I have a brand new AI-driven commercial sleep tracker that provides data readouts like Apple Watches, like the 8 Sleep Bed, etc. Except I think this one is like the gold standard. So I'm interested to see what the data is going to show when I take my Mind hardware out of my mouth, because some patients are reporting that they're getting better sleep, which makes sense, of course, because now the tongue will be able to sit up sort of on the roof of the roof of the mouth a little bit more, and of course there's more room for the tongue. So also I'll do a whole Invisalign update. If you guys want to see an Invisalign video, what I did, where I did it, what I paid, the scans from start to finish, I can provide all of that too. Yeah, so not much more to say. It's raining here in Mexico City today. If you guys are new at the channel, my name's Andrew. I work in sleep medicine, and I try to help patients find answers to their sleep disordered breathing. The channel is about to get a lot better. Subscribe, like the video, comment. I love hearing what you guys are thinking, what your questions are, where things are going with you. If you've tried something and you've noticed a significant change or improvement to your quality of life or sleep, share that story in the comments, because people love to read that. This is why I'm doing the Ethan video to begin with, because this field is sort of behind the curve. So hearing what other patients have gone through, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, and just getting ideas and allowing the creativity to, let's say, flourish a little bit can be super helpful. So if you have anything to share, I invite you to share it. Like, subscribe, etc., and let me know what you guys want to watch next. Enjoy the interview.
Thanks. I saw too. I saw you just did an expansion procedure, and I can tell you're rocking the diastema as well.
Hey, you like that?
Yeah, you have.
I got my Invisalign now too.
Oh, okay.
I don't have the trays in because I speak a little bit better, so I decided not to throw them in. I've been so bad with the Invisalign. I've only been on it for a week, but man, it's kind of annoying. You got to take it out to eat, right? And I drink coffee and stuff. You can't have scalding hot coffee on the
Mm.
trays. It's going to deform them. So you've done a lot. You've been looking for answers for a long time. So there's no, you know, patients love that stuff. I can tell my viewers, they love to, the Evan video was a hit.
Yeah,
Because people don't know what to do, you know. Their doctors aren't helping them very much, depending on what locale they're in, but most people aren't, you know, around the 1% doctors, and so they turn into internet sleuths trying to find answers to their health, because the medical system's a little bit behind the curve in almost
yeah.
every country. So do you want to start by telling, like, when did this all start for you? How old are you, by the way?
I'm 25.
Okay, and when did you realize you had a sleep problem? And then when would you say your symptoms started with that sleep problem?
Yeah, so I guess just to give a bit of an overview of my life and kind of when my symptoms started. It's possible I could have had this problem as a child. I don't really know though. I mean, early elementary school was kind of like my peak for me, where everything came easily. I was in the gifted program as a child. My teacher said I have a bright future, yada yada. Um, and then as I got older, I would say starting when I was 14, 15, I started noticing that I was experiencing a lot more brain fog during the day, just feeling more tired. I would kind of like crash and hit this wall after lunch where I would just remember being in class and just be tired, couldn't focus. And then I would come home and a lot of times I would just take a nap. Um, and I started noticing more prone to depression. And so that kind of went on throughout high school, 14, 15, 16, and then 17 was my senior year of high school. And I was almost close to not graduating. I actually failed one of my classes because I was doing so poorly. And of course, that was a total 180 from early elementary school. It was like everything was easy. And then in high school, everything was just this uphill battle. And so, of course, when I went to the doctor, though, and I tell them I'm experiencing brain fog and having difficulty sleeping at night, then they would just say, well, you're depressed and you need to go on SSRIs. And so I didn't want to take medication initially. I had this mentality at the time, again, around my senior year of high school, where I was like, well, if depression is really my problem, I think I can overcome that on my own. So I started trying all these different lifestyle changes like mindfulness meditation. I started doing cycle commuting, so riding my bike everywhere. And I didn't drive. I still don't drive, by the way, just because of how bad my brain fog was, or and still is. Trying different diets. I stopped eating meat at the time and tried vegan. I also tried like a fully ketogenic diet, so I was trying to cut out certain foods and
Are
see if
you
that would help.
are you still 15 at this point in time?
This was when I was like 17, 18, so like senior and then after my senior year of high school. Um, I, like I said, I almost didn't graduate. I had to take summer school and finally got my diploma. This was like fall of 2017. And then I ended up taking a gap year because I needed to take a year off of school and just figure out what I wanted to do with myself. Um, and really, I would say 2019 to 2020 was when things started getting really bad. I was studying audio engineering at a trade school back in 2019. So I thought, I'm really passionate about music and I've been pretty depressed for a while. So maybe if I immerse myself in something that I'm passionate about, and this will help with my depression and my brain fog. But I kind of had the same issue my senior year of high school where I was really struggling academically. I barely graduated from that program and kind of hit a wall where I was like, look, I've been trying lifestyle changes for years and I'm just feeling worse and worse. Physiologically, something's just not adding up here and I need to figure out what that is. And I just had all these different symptoms, and the only thing that was linking them was this constant fog in my brain. And so I did a lot of research on Reddit, for example, the r/brain fog subreddit. I would read every single day, trying to read what other people's brain fog, what was causing other people's brain fog. And I started seeing different doctors doing tests like going to a neurologist. I did a brain MRI, went to a nutritionist, went to an allergist because I read on our brain fog, one guy who found out that his brain fog was being caused by severe environmental allergies. But there were some allergies, but when I tried treating them, I still had brain fog. Um, Trying to think of what else. I remember on the Jaw Hacks interview, I actually wrote down the list of every single doctor that I saw. Chiropractor. I read on the brain fog subreddit, some people said that they found out their brain fog was being caused by postural issues. Um, and so I tried doing chiropractic and physical therapy. And then finally, what really clicked for me was and at the time too, I didn't think that my problem was sleep apnea because I thought that the typical sleep apnea patient was like my grandfather, who is very overweight and snores like a chainsaw and is elderly. And being young and thin, I didn't think that that was my problem until I read about other people online that were also young and thin and having these same issues and found out they had this type of sleep apnea called UARS, or upper airway resistance syndrome. And when I started reading about the symptoms, then things started clicking. And I was like, even just in terms of braces, I had to get braces twice, once in middle school and then again in high school because my jaws were not developing correctly. The first time I got the braces on, they straightened my teeth, but they didn't fix my tongue thrust. And so I continued to develop this open bite. Um, and it was because of the tongue thrust and the open bite was what caused my narrow palate and my nasal breathing issues. And it was like this, I just went down this huge rabbit hole where things just started clicking. I stumbled on the UARS subreddit and then joined their Discord server. And that was really when I kind of went down that rabbit hole of learning all about jaw development and sleep disordered breathing. So this was end of 2020.
So after at what point in time do you objectively verify through a sleep study, yeah, your suspicions? And
Um,
what level sleep study was that too? Like what was it? Was it a watch pad or an in lab or what was it?
Yeah, I first started with the in lab, and I remember the sleep clinic that I went to was pretty incompetent. And I was kind of prepared for that because I had read on Reddit other people with UARS, which again, UARS is just a subtype of OSA, and some people don't really make a distinction. But at the time, I was in more in the UARS community. But I went to a sleep lab that my neurologist referred me to after doing an MRI that came back fine. I told the neurologist that I was having what felt like translational issues when I read, where I felt like the words were kind of all jumbling together on the page. And this was coming from somebody who used to be, as a child, I was a bookworm and I loved to read. So that really sucked. And she said that could be caused from brain lesions. So we did the MRI, which came back fine. And then she said, I think it's caused by sleep apnea and referred me to a sleep lab. My first sleep study, I think I only slept like an hour. And it said that I had 11 spontaneous arousals, but that there weren't any apneas or something like that. And I was like, well, that doesn't really make any sense. And so I asked for the watch pat because I knew that the watch pat scored the RDI metric, whereas the in-lab sleep study didn't score the respiratory disturbance index. And when I got the watch pat, it came back with an AHI of 5 and an RDI of 11. And that was my first like concrete diagnosis, even though, again, I mean, that's at the time I felt like I was dying because I was like totally at the end of my rope with this problem. And it came back saying that it was basically mild or borderline OSA.
I see. And then what did you do from there? Equipped with that information. What was your next step? What did you decide to do?
Um, well, they first started me on a CPAP, and I remember when I first started it, I had like one good day where I woke up and I felt like a layer of brain fog had lifted in my mind. And I sat down on my computer and I worked on music for like 4 straight hours, which before I hadn't been able to work on any music in 4 months. So I was like, okay, I know I'm onto something here. But I actually started feeling worse with the CPAP. And I had read about something called expiratory pressure intolerance, which a sleep medicine doctor named Dr. Barry Krakow writes about, where a lot of UARS patients can't tolerate um, the exhale on the CPAP. At least for me, it feels like when I would use the CPAP, I felt like I was drowning or suffocating on air because every time I would exhale, it would continuously push air down my throat. Um, and I also think that, a lot of sleep medicine doctors seem to treat CPAP or just PAP in general like it's this magic wand that just magically gets rid of all your sleep apnea. And so I was afraid that if I told the sleep medicine doctor that the CPAP wasn't helping me, even though I was using it with compliance, and they'd be like, well, sleep apnea isn't your issue. But I knew that that was what my problem was. And I think that there are some people where the actual discomfort of having a mask blowing air down your throat might cause just as many arousals as whatever the breathing issue is. And so Dr. Barry Krakow wrote about BiPAP and how UARS patients can typically tolerate BiPAP better because it uses a different pressure on the inhale than on the exhale. Around this time too, I was on this Discord server talking to other people, and they were talking about a new type of adult palate expander called the maxillary skeletal expander by Juan Moon. And I knew that because I grew up with a tongue thrust and a narrow palate and I was having breathing issues, then I wanted to get this new type of expander. And so I called around different orthodontists and then finally found my old orthodontist, Dr. Trevor Nichols, who used to be at Frost Nichols Orthodontist, but now he has his own practice. And he pretty much confirmed a lot of what I suspected about, I had a bit of a lisp growing up and had a tongue thrust. And he said, you have a narrow palate and um, that he offered to do the Marpy on me. But he did say pretty much right away during that initial consultation that the Marpy or the MSC probably wasn't going to be curative of my issue. And he said that the best treatment is MMA. And so this was 2021. 2021, that whole year was kind of just this hell year for me where I was running scared. My symptoms were really bad. Um, Even just in terms of the brain fog, I felt one of the terms I use instead of brain fog is derealization because it feels like I'm experiencing the world as if I'm literally trapped inside of a fog. And so I was having all these dissociative symptoms. And yeah, I basically got this palate expander installed. And then once we started expanding, I was able to switch from using a full face mask to using the nasal pillows mask. And that I think maybe gave me a little bit more benefit as well. But I felt like because my symptoms were progressing to these extremes so quickly, that PAP just wasn't helping me. And I wanted to do the MMA. And so my plan initially was I wanted to consult 4 or 5 different surgeons and go with the one that I felt like was the most qualified. But because of the situation that I found myself in, I reached out to my orthodontist and I was like, look, I'm at the end of my rope. I'm just going to go to the guy that you referred me to, but I need to make sure that he's going to make the right movements to cure me of my problem. And I remember at the time initially, even the people on Discord were making suggestions saying, oh, you should, do this movement or don't do this movement. But the issue was that as time was going on and as I was becoming more and more dissociated, my concern was less about getting the X number of millimeters of movement and just needing to get the surgery as soon as possible. And so May of 2022 was when I had my first MMA.
Are you comfortable in telling us who that was with and what happened, the results, the movements? Did the plan go according to
Yeah.
plan? All that
Yeah, I
stuff?
mean, I think you kind of know because you said you've seen the Jaw Hacks interview, how that went. And I will say the name of the surgeon just so that other people in my state, which is Arizona, know to avoid this person. If I remember the movements correctly, he brought my maxilla forward by 9 millimeters and he did a counterclockwise rotation by impacting my maxilla. So there's 2 different ways to rotate the maxilla. You can impact it, which is where you kind of cut a wedge in the front of the maxilla to rotate it like that. Or you can do a downgraft, which is like bone grafting on the back of the maxilla to rotate it like that. And I think
So you're saying
downgrafting,
rotate it like this, right?
um,
Or like this. This is your front of your face.
okay, yeah. So it was like this before it was steep, and he was going to rotate it counterclockwise like this.
I see. So the posterior maxilla is coming down a bit.
Uh, well,
Or
admittedly, that was what I thought, but wasn't what actually ended up happening because, and this was something that was confirmed by my new surgeon that I'm going to see for my revision, Dr. Gunson. He said that because I had so much advancement and such little counterclockwise rotation, my occlusal plane, which is where the upper and the lower jaws meet, actually got more steep. So it got more clockwise, even though the surgeon meant to rotate it counterclockwise, it actually got steeper. And so he rotated the maxilla, did the 9 millimeter advancement, and then brought the lower jaw forward, I think like 5 or 6 millimeters, which really isn't enough. And I did, admittedly, going into the surgery, I didn't even know the number of millimeters he was going to make, which is not really good, because initially before I was like studying, all the different millimeters and all the different movements. But like I said, as I kept getting closer to the surgery, it was like I couldn't think my way out of a paper bag. And so yeah, it didn't go as planned. It um, it basically feels like my whole airway is lopsided now, because it feels like my lower jaw or my upper jaw was brought forward a good amount, but my lower jaw is still recessed. You can kind of see here. Actually, I'll just show you on the camera here. You can tell that I have this discomfort where the skin on my chin feels like it's being stretched in a way that feels unnatural. And that's because he compensated for the lack of advancement on the lower jaw by doing this huge genioplasty or chin advancement. And so now I have a lot of discomfort on my chin because it feels like my skin is being stretched over my chin very unnaturally.
What about subjective changes? Anything? Worse,
Uh,
better, the same?
Yeah, well, the first 3 months was mostly waiting, but I did notice initially, pretty much immediately, that I no longer would wake up feeling like I just got hit by a truck, because that was the way that I described before my first MMA. Whenever I'd wake up, I would always describe it as like being ran over by a train or being hit by a truck or something like that. I started feeling less dissociated too. Because I remember before my first surgery, I felt so dissociated. It was like my eyes were constantly floating out of my skull, which I know that sounds weird, but I don't know how else to explain that feeling. My vision was all blurry too. I couldn't focus my eyes properly. But I started feeling less dissociated, started becoming easier to get out of bed in the morning. And it was about 3 months after where I would say subjectively, maybe, I don't know, 15-20% improvement. So I still had all the same symptoms, but that small bit of improvement was enough to give me the mental functionality to where I could leave my room and go back to school and work. So I started working again part-time at a library by my house and started using the money that I was making to start going out to clubs and raves again. And wanted to meet more people and promote my music. But because I felt dissociated, it was still very hard to meet people. It's a very hard feeling to describe, but it's like um I would be in the club, and even if I wanted to talk to somebody, I felt like there was this fog that was preventing me from connecting with people and things around me. And so everybody basically just felt like an NPC or a non-playable character where I couldn't really talk or really connect with people. But yeah, those were some improvements. The fact that I was able to go back to work, whereas before I simply couldn't hold down a job to save my life, was pretty big. But I just remember still at the time always being exhausted at work. I was taking like caffeine pills to try and like keep my eyes open. And then at one point I was prescribed armodafinil, and that helped a lot actually to get through the workday. But my symptoms actually started getting worse again because um, so in terms of the timeline, this was like I had the surgery, I think it was April of 2022. And then that summer, I got a job again. I started feeling better. And then going into the winter, I started feeling worse again, where I started waking up again, feeling like I was being hit by a truck and felt like my eyes were floating out of my skull because um, I was having a lot of sinus issues. I had a problem I found out was called vasomotor rhinitis, which is a type of non-allergic rhinitis, where the changes in the atmospheric pressure during the winter would cause a lot of pressure in my sinuses. And I could even feel this like in the sinuses here. My ears would be popping. I couldn't breathe through my nose, and I wake up feeling like I was being waterboarded. And so yeah, but in terms of improvements, then it was those were, I would say, the improvements that I was noticing.
Did you end up doing a sleep study after your MMA?
I did actually. I did a sleep study with Dr. Anil Rama from the Sleep and Brain Institute. Um, and the irony
Was
is
that
that
the Knox A1S? Did you go in the hotel and stuff?
Yeah, it was in a hotel. The irony was that before the MMA, the sleep study the watch pat that I did said that I had a respiratory disturbance index of 11. But after the MMA with Dr. Rama's sleep study, and this was, I think I did the study July of 2023. So it was a little over a year after, it said I had a respiratory disturbance index of 17. So I assume he must have just been using a different scoring criteria. But because even though I felt a little bit better, my scores on paper were actually worse.
Interesting. What about the actual recovery process from MMA? How would you describe that to a newbie who's thinking about doing MMA? Is it worse than people make it out to be? Was it about the same? Was it super painful? Did it suck? Also, what about the thing that I feel I'm probably gonna get MMA just because I've been doing this for so long. I want to finish the fight and not be on PAP for the rest of my life. The thing that I
Yeah.
think about the most is like the maxilla and the mandible are being pulled forward and it's gonna put tension on all the soft tissues in the face. Do you feel that a lot? How long did you feel that for, if so? And was that weird too? Like, what were the
You
worst?
mean do I
Yeah,
feel like stretching of the soft tissues on my face?
yeah, exactly. Like your face is sitting in an unnatural position. Your face just feels completely different than how your face used to feel.
Well, that's definitely how I feel in my chin. Like I said before, it feels like the skin on my chin is being stretched, but it's in a way that feels painful and unnatural. But in terms of the actual recovery process, I was really excited to get the surgery. Before the surgery, I was like, I don't care about the recovery because I just need to do this and move on with my life. Um, and I felt like a dying corpse going into that. But I would say waking up from the anesthesia, I was drugged to all high hell, but it was, if I were to compare what that felt like to somebody, I would say it was like if somebody really badly beat you up in your face and broke both of your jaws. So it was kind of like I woke up to that.
That's
And
comforting. People,
yeah, yeah, it was a lot of, I tell people, it was a lot of fun recovery. I kept spitting out blood because blood was like pouring out of my mouth and it looked like I had just been shot because there was all this blood like on my hospital gown. They kept injecting me with doses of like morphine and steroids when I was in the hospital. That helped with the pain. There was a lot of just ridiculous swelling and ridiculous numbness. And so the numbness definitely helped with some of the soreness and the pain, but it didn't completely help with all of it. So even though it's kind of like, that feeling when you fall asleep on your arm and your arm feels all numb and tingly. I woke up and had that like kind of like all over my face here. But yeah, it was honestly more rough than I thought it would be. I remember at the time I was like, wow, I don't think anything could have really like mentally prepared me for what this recovery would be like.
really, eh? So how long was it intense like that? Like when was the point in time where it was like, okay, yeah, obviously you're still recovering, but like the intensity of that recovery is behind you.
Well, I kind of had a relapse in pain where I think I only needed prescription painkillers for the first maybe like 10 to 14 days. And then after that, I went off painkillers. And then I think around week 3 again, once some of the numbness started going down, I started having the pain started coming back again. And so for a few days, I went back on, I think it was like Tylenol number threes with codeine or something. Um, but even when, like 3 months after that surgery, I felt like there was still a lot of swelling on my face. Um, it's also difficult too in terms of just like the diet because I don't exactly remember. Um, I'm going to have to go through this again when I do my surgery in the summer with Dr. Gunson, but initially you're on like an all liquid diet. And then you can start chewing very soft foods. And then I don't remember what month, maybe like the 2 month mark or something like that, you can return to like a normal diet.
But you found that kind of difficult as well.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I don't know. I guess the dietary part wasn't really too bad. It was just trying to think of what I ate at the time. Like Lots of blended up things. Like I would even soups, like I would put soups in the blender, ice cream in the blender. Ice cream with milk, like milkshake was that was good. Um, and then once I finally started being able to eat more like soft foods, then I started doing more like, or I could open my mouth because I think the first couple of weeks that had my jaws were rubber banded shut. And then I started eating more like mashed potatoes and then like scrambled eggs and stuff like that.
I see. And now you're doing jaw surgery with Gunson. When is it again? July?
June.
Oh, June. Are you excited for that?
Yeah, I'm really excited.
How come you chose to go with Dr. Gunson? How many other like for revisions? How many providers did you have consultation with?
Yeah, my initial plan was I wanted to consult Casey Lee, Michael Gunson, and Larry Wolford because I felt like if there's any surgeons in the United States that can fix my problem and properly do the revision, it would probably be one of those three, at least based on the research that I had done. And so I consulted with Casey Lee first. I think I was going to consult with Wolford first, but I never actually ended up consulting with him. And Casey Lee, I was kind of admittedly disappointed by the consultation. I had seen his lectures online, and so I kind of already knew what to expect going into it. But I think Casey Lee knows that a lot of people who come to consult with him have already done a lot of research. And so we didn't really sit there and just explain a lot of things. But I think it was only like a 20-minute consultation. And he was kind of like, yeah, I can put you back on CPAP, or I can try and expand you more with ease, or I can do the revision MMA. He gave me three choices, and those were the three options that he suggested. He said that the MARPE, I didn't get a great expansion, and that I think I got kind of a fan shaped or like cone shaped expansion where it mostly expanded the front of my mid face, but not really the back of my airway. Um, and so the reason why I didn't actually go to Casey Lee was because he ended up saying he didn't want to do surgery on me because my symptoms were so bad. I'm trying to think of what he said. He said something along the lines of like, when I do a surgery, I want to make sure that I'm going to be improving the patient's life. And it's unusual for a sleep apnea patient to be debilitated or to be as debilitated as Ethan is. So he was like, I can't really guarantee that this is something that's going to help you. And so I don't want to do the surgery. And my response to that was basically, I was like, okay, thanks for letting me know. But I told him that, I've tried CPAP and I've tried BiPAP, and the only thing that seemed to improve my symptoms was surgical intervention. Um, because the CPAP didn't help brain fog, the BiPAP didn't help the brain fog, at least not in the long term. But I didn't start noticing consistent improvements in terms of being able to go back to school and work and stuff like that until I had my first MMA, even though I was under advanced.
Are you?
And so,
Go ahead. No, no, go ahead.
um, yeah, and then after that was when I consulted with Michael Gunson. I drove to Santa Barbara with my mom, and I was more content with the consultation because it was a full 2 hour long interview or
Oh,
consultation,
wow.
compared to Casey Lee's 20 minutes. Um, and yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't exactly know. I think it was also kind of a decision that I made with my mom, where both my mom and I were like, I think that it's best that we go with Dr. Gunson. He wanted me to do a dives. That was the thing too. He said, he kind of said something similar where he was like, um, yeah, I can't really guarantee how much improvement there will be. So I want you to undergo a DISE or drug-induced sleep endoscopy because I want to make sure that there is collapsibility in your airway. And so I did the drug-induced sleep endoscopy, which showed that my airway was still collapsing. I did it with Dr. Jordan Weiner here in Phoenix. And when Michael Gunson saw the results of that, he was like, okay, there's obviously there's still an issue here, and I can address your problem. So that was why we decided to go through with the surgery.
Did they note where specifically your airway was collapsing and how, any future MMA movements would address that?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, when I woke up from propranolol or whatever they gave me to knock me out. The doctor said, your airway is collapsing worse behind your palate, but that's causing issues in the other parts of your airway. So he said that when I would breathe, my whole airway was basically going like this. Um, and he said I would be a candidate for a mandibular advancement device or the um, Inspire. But I told him, I said, oh, I'm planning on doing a revision with Michael Gunson. And what he told me was that he was going to do a larger counterclockwise rotation on my maxilla and that he would be able to advance my mandible by up to another centimeter. Do you think that would cure the issue? And Dr. Jordan Weiner was like, oh, yeah, totally, definitely. Um, so, yeah, those were the movements that he suggested. And that was where the airway was the worst.
And what about Gunson? Did you talk to him? I mean, it sounds like you did talk to him post dice. First, he said to you, no guarantees. But once he had the information from the dice, did his tune change at all, or did he kind of say the same thing?
I mean, he still kind of has the same has been saying the same thing of he said when I the last time I consulted with him and with my mom, he said something along the lines of it's impossible to determine whether repositioning your jaws is going to change the chemistry of your brain, which I don't agree with that. Um, I don't know why he said it's completely impossible to determine that because it would make sense that um, it's during REM and deep sleep that your brain. I don't know. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I'm pretty sure that um, during REM is when your brain creates neurotransmitters or rebalances them or something like that. I don't really know. But at least for me, I remember before my first surgery, for example, I told my therapist, I said that even if everybody on planet Earth told me not to get this surgery, I would still get the surgery because I know in my heart and based on all my experiences that this is what I need to do to feel better. It would kind of be like saying, um, I don't know whether or not the sun is going to rise tomorrow. The reason why I feel very confident that the sun is going to rise tomorrow is because every bit of evidence and every piece of data that I've ever been presented with over the course of my life has led me to believe that when I wake up tomorrow, the sun is going to come up. And if it didn't, that would be really, really bizarre and fly completely in the face of every bit of evidence that I've been presented with. So it's kind of the same thing for me, where it's like um, I have all these symptoms and I've had all these symptoms for years, and the only thing that seems to be linking them is this fog in my brain. So to say something like, well, I can't guarantee that this surgery is going to improve your depression, to me just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, yeah, I don't know. I hear that too now more than ever. This field's been moving quick, and I hear patients relaying to me, surgeons saying, it's like, I don't know if they're like hedging, the risk or whatever to try to not inflate expectations. I
I
have
think that's
seen,
it.
yeah, and not everyone, I don't know why either. The other thing too is kind of spooky. I've never heard of any bad stuff with Gunson, but even the top hyper specialized sleep disorder breathing surgeons, like people come out on the other side and there's just a big question mark. It's like, they maybe they I've seen people come out of the other side and you look at the scans and it's like they didn't even move anything. That's what it looks like. Which is weird. There haven't been too many of those, but there's been people where there's not significant improvements, or sometimes it's worse. That's even sadder. I mean, and more tragic, right? But I've seen that too, like where people get double jaw advancement and somehow things are worse. And the surgeons can't seem to explain it either, which is the worst part.
I
But
remember seeing a lecture from Casey Lee where he said that he had a patient that did MMA, did, large advancements, but said that he actually felt worse. But that was because um, his nasal cavity was so constricted. And
I
so he
recall,
expanded him with ease, and that was basically what it took to fix the sleep apnea.
right? Yeah, that's an interesting point too. Um, if you can't breathe through your nose, it doesn't matter, right? You're still going to have too much negative pressure back there. And even if you get a 2 centimeter advancement, like in AP dimensions, like at the base of the tongue. If your nose is cooked, like the negative pressure is just going to overwhelm uh, the tensity of, or the tension rather, of those tissues, and it's still going to collapse. Um, yeah, Gunson, I think though is like cream of the crop. So I if I had to choose, yeah, I think yeah, Lee obviously deserves some recognition. He's like legendary. But I think I would go with Gunson, honestly. Based off of all the information that I've gathered so far. I think he's the play, but there's a couple other surgeons right up there with him, more or less. So
There is one thing um, I don't like about Gunson, which I figure I'll just mention just for people considering going to him, which I think is kind of odd. But um, whenever I consult with him, he always asks me if I've been staying sober. Um, and you know, alcohol, that's it's not too difficult to discontinue that for me. But at least for me, I'm pretty much dependent on cannabis to sleep. And so it works, at least for me, more efficiently than any sleeping pill I've tried. At least what I've been doing now is I'll take like 15 to 30 milligrams of temazepam, and then I'll smoke like a bowl of weed, and that's usually sufficient for me to fall asleep. But even my mom says something like, "Oh, I find it annoying that he's always asking me like if I'm staying sober and when was the last time I had a drink and stuff like that," which I think he just wants his patients to be in a good place mentally before going into such a major surgery. But again, it's just kind of frustrating for me that I'm like, well, how am I supposed to sleep? I made another point too, actually, where when I got frustrated at one of like his front desk lady or something, and I said something like, telling me to stop drinking before getting the surgery would be like telling an alcoholic, I have the cure for your alcoholism. I just can't give it to you until you stop drinking. It's like, at least for me, I have very poor executive functioning. I have basically no impulse control. And that's the reason why I drink and smoke is basically self-medicating. And I would imagine, at least if the surgery goes the way that I expect it to, that it would be very easy, or at least a lot easier for me to stay sober. Whereas before, it's like there's a reason why I'm self-medicating.
right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like the weight issue, right? Like telling people to drop weight, uh,
Yeah.
to get rid of their apnea, but they're having apnea because of their weight. And
They're
it
too
makes,
tired to exercise, so they can't lose weight.
yeah, plus I mean their metabolism and their endocrine system is just going haywire, and in an unfair way, like really packing on energy that should otherwise be mobilized and used. um Looking like, what would you tell someone who's just starting their journey, who thinks they might have a restricted airway, they might start surgery? What are things that worked for you along the way? Like, you sounded like you tried everything under the sun. Did anything actually help? Like, where you actually know a noticeable difference in some lifestyle change or a medication? I know you just said cannabis. PAP, anything on PAP?
Like I said, with PAP, I only noticed mild and inconsistent improvements. In terms of medication, I've been on a lot. I've tried a lot of sleeping pills. I've tried three SSRIs, which that whole SSRI class just doesn't work for me. I'm actually going to start a new antidepressant called Auvelity, which is a combination of dextromethorphan and bupropion, which I'm pretty excited about because dextromethorphan is both a cough suppressant and a dissociative hallucinogen, depending on the dosage. And there was a period of time in my life where I was taking psychedelics, and I used to take dextromethorphan in recreational amounts because afterwards it would help a lot with my depression. Like even if I was having a lot of really bad, like intrusive thoughts, after I would trip, robo trip is what they call it, then it felt like my brain had just been rebooted, and those thoughts, at least for a week or two, would just completely disappear. But there was one period of time where I got misdiagnosed with ADHD, which I've been misdiagnosed with multiple times. I've tried Adderall, Ritalin, and Focalin for that. And this was back in 2020 before I found out I had sleep apnea. And at the time, the Adderall did help in terms of like being more focused and getting more things done and being more productive. But in the long term, because my fatigue and my brain fog were continuing to get worse. It reached the point where all I was experiencing was side effects like increased heart rate, and I still couldn't focus because of how bad my brain fog was. But I mean, I'd recommend, as opposed to something like Adderall or Ritalin, I would recommend something like modafinil. Is I definitely feel more awake and alert on modafinil than other stimulants. Um, but I'm also going to try TMS. I've tried ketamine, IV ketamine, which unfortunately that didn't really help me. Um, Wellbutrin I tried, and that helped a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of medications out there, and I would definitely recommend like it's a long journey. Getting an MSC, getting your braces, having to wait, 12 months before you can get the surgery. So I definitely would recommend like at least trying some of those medications in the meantime.
What about outside of pharmaceuticals? Was there anything that helped you, like foods, stop eating certain foods, exercise, anything, meditation, changing the time you get up?
It's actually interesting you mentioned that because there was one time I went on keto and it actually did help my brain fog, which I'm not sure why, because I tried going back on keto later and I didn't experience the same improvements. But I later hypothesized that it might have something to do with reducing inflammation in my airway by cutting out inflammatory foods. Kind of like I mentioned before, that in the winter months, I would get a lot of congestion and pressure in my sinuses. So I think that maybe cutting out certain inflammatory foods might have helped with some of that inflammation.
But that's it, eh?
Yeah.
So, knowing what you know now, yeah, what would you say to someone who is just figuring out that sleep disordered breathing is the cause for their debilitation and daytime symptoms? What advice do you have for someone like that?
Um, I'm not sure because I feel like if a person was in that situation and they really wanted to feel better, I wouldn't necessarily need to give them advice in order for them to feel better. I would think that if they wanted to feel better, they would just seek out treatments on their own. But I would definitely recommend starting out with expansion for one. Expansion and then like start like mouth taping or using like a chin strap when you sleep. Um, And I would say too, even just try PAP, even if you're one of those people where it doesn't work for you for whatever reason, it's worth trying, both trying the CPAP and the BiPAP. But I would just say, start with some of those less invasive treatments like expansion and PAP, and then just continue to advocate for yourself. Don't allow yourself to be gaslit by doctors, because you know your body better than anybody else does. I know my body better than anybody else, and I'm not going to listen to a doctor who is going to misdiagnose me and mistreat me or something like that.
What about with respect to surgery? Do you have any advice for anyone?
Uh,
How do you found Gunson, right? And now
yeah,
obviously they can watch this and find Gunson, but what were the principles along the way that led you to the right person?
I definitely recommend doing research on different surgeons. I just recently came across a website called like azjawsurgery.com or something like that. And there's apparently a jaw surgeon named Dr. Wasson, or I think it was spelled Wasson. And his practice is limited only to jaw surgery. And, it's frustrating for me now because I'm like, if I had heard about this guy, 3 years ago, or if my orthodontist had referred me to this guy, it's possible I might not be needing a revision because the surgeon that my orthodontist referred me to doesn't only do jaw surgery. He does more stuff like wisdom tooth removal or like dental implants. So I definitely would recommend doing your research and finding a surgeon that exclusively does jaw surgery and not just somebody that mostly does wisdom tooth removal and jaw surgery on the side.
Right. Mm, I think I've exhausted most questions. Is there anything else you think that's worth touching on that I forgot, or anything you want to mention?
I mean, I do want to advocate for my music project, I guess, because even though I've went through a lot of messed up things over the years, then I used my music project Origin of Sticks as a way of kind of semi-autobiographically documenting that. And so I feel like if more people listen to my music, and my goal eventually, I hope I'll reach there once I get my surgery, is I want to turn my music hobby into my career. Um, but uh, before my first MMA, for example, I had a release that I called Hypnagogia, which the term hypnagogia means leading to sleep, or like it's if you've ever been laying down and you're about to fall asleep and then you kind of felt like you were falling or started dreaming or something and jerked yourself awake. That's what hypnagogia is, or what that refers to. Um, but I made this release about what I was experiencing at the time and kind of the dissociation. And I like to use my different scans of like my jaws and stuff like that as the album cover. So at least for this release, I had a picture of the MSE, and you can see like I got the split on the diastema. Um, but yeah, I mean, if there's any way, anybody listening to this, if there's any way that you want to help me, even just by listening to my music and sharing it with your friends, then that would mean the world to me. Because that's, I feel like, the only thing that I have to show for myself for everything that I've went through over the years dealing with these issues.
I'll make sure to put it in the comment section and the description box of the video to let people know. You have a channel, right?
Yeah,
Where,
Origin of Sticks is the name of my main music project.
okay. Yeah, I think that covers everything, more or less.
Okay.
I'll trim this up, and maybe if you're interested, you can come back on post Gunson to let
Yeah,
everyone
no,
know how it goes.
I was actually going to say that. I was going to reach back out to Ron as well, and then some of the other podcasts that I interviewed on. Once I recover from the surgery with Gunson, I want to be able to update people and let people know, like, did this cure my problem? What improvements do I notice? And just stuff like that.
Yeah, I think people will want to know for sure. There'll be a couple comments, people asking what happened. So yeah, for sure. You're more than welcome. I'd love to have you back on. I think it would add value for everyone. Um, yeah, hey, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I will get this out eventually. It's gonna take me a little while, but I appreciate you taking the time. It's gonna help.
Yeah.
Like I said, the viewers love this stuff because it's a big black box out there. So someone who's gone through as many steps as you have, it's valuable insight. So I
Thanks for
appreciate it.
having me.
Yeah, yeah, glad to help. Uh, yeah, I think that's it. We'll stay in touch. All right.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
okay, thanks, and good luck with everything moving forward. Feel free to shoot me an email when you're feeling better post Gunson, and we can go from there.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
All right, buddy. It was nice meeting
See ya.
you.